The 2023 NASCAR Xfinity Series feels like a nostalgic blast to a great time in our human civilization. That year is the glorious year of 2019, and I can certainly attest to that because while boomers are going to say the 70s and the 80s, you had rock and roll, all of these fantastic things, myself and the people in the Xfinity garage certainly want to go down that old town road time and time again. NRF Productions proudly presents the Spotter's Guide predicting the 2023 NASCAR Xfinity Series regular season. Cole Custer's NASCAR career can be summed up perfectly, poetically, by the canny Mr. Incredible meme. Stewart-Haas Racing hopes to relive those glory days. Perhaps they are feeling the most nostalgic of any team by demoting Cole Custer back down to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. The crew chief for this second stint will not be Mike Shiplett, NASCAR's most underrated crew chief who moves to a competition director role at RCR. Instead, they will have Jonathan Toney. Cole Custer in this season, he is the safe, conservative choice to bet on when it comes to the Xfinity champion in this season. The last time he was here, he won 9 races, and now he might be even more deadly considering he has Cup experience. Many race teams like Junior Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, and KAULIG might have some major PTSD this season with just how good this 00 team is going to be in 2023. Last season for our Motorsports was a bit of a disaster. They didn't take that step forward with 3 entries, and like their Twitter page shows, they are now in rebuild mode, and they will do this with David Starr. He's a veteran driver. I'm not necessarily sure if this is the guy that's really going to get past the hump, but he does have the experience. And assuming they don't jump up to 2 or 3 cars, I think the less is more, quality over quantity, might help them really get where they wanted to go in 2022. SS Greenlight Racing saw what Stewart-Haas Racing did and decided, hey, we want some of that. We want to turn back the clock to the glorious year that the St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup, and while they have blamed Perkins in the 07, not exactly their best choice considering his subpar truck season last year with CR7 Motorsports. The Krispy Kreme kid, Gray Gaulding, he's back. He returned to the 08, and he's back in the car that really changed my perception of Gray Gaulding because in Cup with BK Racing, you'll remember he was pretty much the 3rd mandatory caution, but in the Xfinity Series, this is where he really turned it on. Patrick Donahue got the most out of him as a driver to where he was just 1 spot away from making the Xfinity playoffs, even though, to be fair, the Xfinity competition back then was fairly weak. But regardless, SS Greenlight Racing will be better with Gray Gaulding, not just behind the wheel, but you know Gray Gaulding's going to have the connections to hook them up with free donuts at the Monday morning meetings. Sam Mayer in 2022 got some heads turning in a good way. Mistakes were made, but they were made at a minimal to optimize his performance. If only his tongue were as big enough as Lightning McQueen at Talladega. Junior Motorsports, they are hoping to elevate Mayer to the next level, first by giving him a new but familiar crew chief. Marty Lindley is back as this concoction of youth and experience was mighty deadly for the competition with 25 victories and 2 championships through their seasons together in K&N as well as ARCA. Look for this sophomore driver to make that step up to where the Junior Motorsports bar is typically set for its drivers like we've seen with Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, and William Byron. Success in the NASCAR Truck Series, it doesn't always correlate to Xfinity. Sheldon Creed and Jeff Stankiewicz learned that the hard way through an un-RCR-like season for its flagship car number 2, though when you look at RCR's abysmal track record when it comes to expanding to more entries than the previous season, these struggles for Creed make perfect sense. This will not happen in 2023. This is the same core that spent all of 2022 growing their chemistry. meaning in this sophomore season, this should be the year for Sheldon Creed to prove he is a superstar in the making. And Richard Childress in this season, he's secretly hoping and also not hoping that Sheldon Creed ends up exactly like Tyler Reddick. JD Motorsports is a team that has really carried a heavy load. They've filled their backpack too much, and now they're starting to unload their weight. And you can see that in 2023 as they are downsizing to just 2 entries. Bailey Currey was an asset to the team in 2022, both behind the wheel and as a hands-on driver that likes to work on his own cars. His aspirations in year 2 as a full-time wheelman of this 4-car is to build on his top 20 points finish and move the goalposts towards playoff contention. Car number 6 will see the 2002 quarter midget national champion Brendan Poole round out this experienced duo of racers. JD Motorsports definitely has its most skilled driver roster since they got a preview of what an Alva, Florida watermelon farmer was capable of, also back in 2019. Justin Allgaier is perhaps the Denny Hamlin of the NASCAR Xfinity series. He's been the anti-hero in namely 2018, 2020, and last year where he was the winning pass for the championship, watching yet another young star who had just started his Xfinity career get the championship that Justin Allgaier has spent the last 7 years working so hard to obtain. Now for 2023, this core group of racers featuring Allgaier, Jason Burdett, and Eddie DeHaan has been split up. As Jason Burdett, he moves to Justin Allgaier's new Xfinity teammate for this season, while the 2008 ARCA champion reunites with a guy that made him push for that achievement 15 years ago, Jim Pullman. Junior Motorsports is extremely bold for doing this, considering Justin Allgaier and Jason Burdett, they are the right combination for each other. But if Pullman can reteach Allgaier some of the things that allowed him to win the ARCA championship in 2008 to become the hero in Xfinity, this move right here will become well worth it. The most prominent influencer, potentially in NASCAR history, just called Josh Berry a Cup champion in the offseason. Now, that could age poorer than Rick Hendrick's quote about Casey Kane, but this praise from Dale Earnhardt Jr. is officially the late model veteran's call to action. As for the A-team itself, Mike Bumgarner leaves his role as crew chief to become the team's new director of competition. Taylor Moyer moves from his role on the number 1 to crew chief the number 8 to lead potentially the number's most successful season since the Dale Earnhardt Jr. era. Josh Berry's entire journey, his entire grind through late models and Xfinity has led to this 2023 season. Should he fill the void in the wins column that Gibbs, Gregson, and Allmendinger leave behind now going to the Cup Series, I'll tell you this, he will be attached to this phone. He will not be able to live without it, much like a social media addict. The inevitable 2023 Xfinity Most Popular Driver replaces the 2022 recipient in the iconic Junior Motorsports number 9 car. Brandon Jones, after the Martinsville race last year, gained a ridiculous amount of new fans to the point where I bet his race-worn socks and underwear from Martinsville could probably sell for the price of a used 2012 Chevrolet Camaro. One thing that also changed is somehow the consensus that Brandon Jones is an underrated driver, which I don't know what you guys are looking at. I don't know what stats you're looking at. I look at Racing Reference, and based on what the numbers show, he scored a JGR low, a JGR career low in top 10s last year. Apparently, 2 good races at Martinsville justified not just getting this caliber of a ride, but also getting Jason Burdett. Honestly, the situation with Brandon Jones kinda reminds me of Hailie Deegan, except in 2 ways. Number 1, Brandon Jones can actually win. And number 2, Brandon Jones has thick skin. He has been thrown a lot his way as a pay driver. In fact, I've been highly critical of him countless times. Yet Brandon Jones throughout his entire Xfinity career has shown nothing but class, strong integrity. He's been humble all along the way. He hasn't let the haters get to him, and I think that is going to be a valuable asset, a valuable trait, especially in this 2023 season where Brandon Jones will now be expected to do a lot more than he did at JGR. Landon Castle continues to be the most unluckiest driver financially in NASCAR history. The bubble bursting for crypto led the people at Voyager to do this.
I declare bankruptcy! money!
And without money, without the checks to put out a $100,000 race car on the racetrack competitively, KAULIG Racing cut ties with Landon Castle. But instead of focusing on quality over quantity, KAULIG Racing, for some reason, they are continuing with 3 cars. The KAULIG number 10 car will become a Leach car, with Justin Haley doing most of the super speedways, Austin Dillon doing Auto Club and a couple other races, AJ Allmendinger, of course, doing all the road courses. And then because, of course, Chris Rice is just a motivational guy that you want to be around. His energy is unlike any other in the Cup Series and Xfinity Series garage. For 5 races, the NASCAR Xfinity Series is going to be, well, you guys know what time it is. Let's play the song.
It's the cover show. 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 It's the cover show.
As for the remainder of the races, specifically the Dash for Cash and the playoff races, I'm going to spitball a couple more names. Ross Chastain, considering he has a history with KAULIG. Josh Bilicki, now that he's on an RCR aligned team. Ty Dillon, then some even crazier names like Carson Hocevar, Chase Purdy, Rajah Caruth, Nick Sanchez, Matt DiBenedetto, maybe even Jack Wood, who's in the Chevrolet system. It's going to be interesting to see how KAULIG Racing patches up this team for not only the entire season, but also to see how they will perform with all these rotational drivers for this 2023 season. Honestly, what would the perception of Daniel Hemrick be as a driver if that storybook last corner rough up of Austin Cindric didn't just make him a winner, but also a series champion? Yes, KAULIG Racing had to make the precipitous step as an organization with 2 next-generation Cup teams. Even then, AJ Allmendinger, he won races and was a few tire issues away from cementing in stone one of the greatest Xfinity seasons in modern NASCAR history. The 11 team struggled all season long, which included a crew chief swap from Alex Yonst to Jason Trinchier for the postseason run. Way more should be expected of Daniel Hemrick this season than yet another no-win round of 12 exit. He's a Xfinity Series champion, and few in the series can rival his racing knowledge, and now it is time for his performance to reflect that. Chandler Smith is the newest graduate of the NASCAR Truck Series and the second of 2 KAULIG drivers racing for the Xfinity Championship. 2022 for Chandler Smith was summed up by one word: maturity. Becoming a new father led him to make better decisions on the racetrack and more success. And my problem with Chandler Smith and also Daniel Hemrick in 2023 isn't necessarily skill, but rather KAULIG Racing. It seems like KAULIG Racing is expanding way too rapidly because they've got the 2 full-time Xfinity drivers. They've got the 2 full-time Cup Series drivers that are trying to navigate the next generation car. They've got the All-Star car that they really could have done without and just focused on Chandler Smith and Daniel Hemrick. Then for some reason they're going to run a 3rd KAULIG car in the Daytona 500 and various other Cup races. I just think they are expanding too much. And if they continue to have these growing pains into 2023, Chandler Smith might struggle in his transition from trucks to Xfinity. Zane Smith, Chandler Smith, and now Sammy Smith? It's hard to believe they all don't share a bloodline unless you are of the belief that we are all relatives of each other. But even then, they do have one commonality, and that is talent. For Sammy, that is 2 ARCA East championships with Joe Gibbs Racing. Of course, nowadays, the depth level and the talent in the ARCA competition is down in the dumps, but at least Smith, he raced up to the standards of his equipment. Unlike a Swiss Army knife of other drivers that had a full hauler and road crew just to win once in 2 full-time campaigns, the heir to Michael Annett as the next Pilot Flying J driver inherits the old Brandon Jones team from last year. What I've really been able to identify, especially in the Xfinity series, is that some drivers have talent and some drivers bring a pretty paycheck. For Sammy Smith in Xfinity, he can not only stand out as an important piece of Joe Gibbs Racing future, not only financially, but also behind the wheel. Without Brandon Jones in the number 19 car this season, well, this officially becomes the Joe Gibbs Racing version of, well, let's play the music. From track to track to track, you are going to see a different driver behind the wheel of the 19 car almost every single week. Ryan Truex will compete in 6 races, and because of the number switch, I'm sure many NASCAR fans will mistake him for Martin Truex Jr. in his starts. Connor Mozak will try to steer clear of snowflakes when he races the streets of Chicago, as well as Pocono and Road America. Then for 5 races, you have Joe Graf Jr.? Yeah, the guy that failed to qualify in a RCR and KAULIG car will get his second chance in top tier equipment for the first time since the wonderful year of 2019, also known as the most popular year of NRF Productions analytically, and according to my haters, it was the last year I was relevant and could identify as a good YouTuber. But other than that, they've also got Myatt Snider doing some races, and this is an interesting combination. I'm surprised they haven't really announced any other big names. I'd assume Trevor Bayne is going to get some starts in this car. Ty Gibbs will likely run a couple races that he wants to get more experience at. And then, of course, Christopher Bell. You've just got to put him in the Xfinity New Hampshire race. He is almost undefeated at that track. If they decide to put him in, pretty much that is going to be the Christopher Bell Invitational. John Hunter Nemechek rounds out the Joe Gibbs Racing trio with his return to the Xfinity Series. And guess what? We continue the theme of 2019, the year I graduated high school. Ben Bayshore will be the crew chief. And if you're a John Hunter Nemechek fan, I have some words of advice. Try to avoid Kyle Busch fans with a 9.5-foot pole, because if you even get them started on about Ben Bayshore, even mention the name, they are going to ramble on and on about Nashville 2022 and various other poorly executed races that Ben Bayshore put out. Now, what is really going to set Nemechek apart is really his maturity, because remember guys, he's already climbed this ladder before. Do-overs are extremely rare, especially in NASCAR, but when you get that chance, you always expect massive improvement, and John Hunter Nemechek is going to do so much better than what he did with GMS in 2019. If the schedule were chocked full of super speedway races like NASCAR probably wanted in 2019, Austin Hill is not only your defending champion, but we're probably talking about one of the greatest drivers to ever ascend into NASCAR since potentially Dale Earnhardt. Well, instead, we're in a reality where there are short tracks, and that we all know is Austin Hill's kryptonite. In 2022, though, Andy Street and this 21 core, they were better equipped for RCR's growing pains of expanding back to 2 entries. And that stability really gave Austin Hill a leg up on Sheldon Creed. Now, can it continue? That's the question. Well, you can look at it like this. Yes, Sheldon Creed, he is going to get much better this season, but so is RCR, because you got to consider that Mike Shiplett is now in the Xfinity program as the competition director. So for Austin Hill, I'd expect a lot more let's goes this season, especially at tracks other than super speedways. The Xfinity organization that is titled Sam Hunt Racing, and no, the popular country singer is not the owner of this team, expands to 2 Toyota Supras in this season. Tyler Reddick, someone who knows Victory Lane like the back of his hand, will make select starts including Auto Club. Some other names I would expect to be in this car will be Bubba Wallace at the road courses to kind of get his craft better at these tracks. Maybe you get Ty Gibbs and even some of the Tricon guys in trucks like Corey Heim or even Taylor Gray if he's even eligible. The 24 team has potential, but I think their biggest thing is just piecing together a roster that is going to really get the most out of that car this season. AM Racing expands their NASCAR portfolio to include the Xfinity Series, and for a team of their caliber, 2018 NASCAR Truck Series champion Brett Moffitt is the guy to move the chains, at least on the track. Off of it is really where the issues arise with this move, because this is a driver who has lost his ride at Hattori after winning the championship, then last year with our Motorsports because he did not have the sponsorship dollars to keep the team operating at a competitive level. And I really hope this season the AM accounting team doesn't make any miscalculations, because if they do, it will be a massive liability to this team in their inaugural Xfinity season. Kaz Grala was a year off from being able to say confidently that he'll never be 23 with anyone but Sam Hunt Racing. Talent has never been his issue. It has always been about securing the funding to get to race stock cars professionally. instead of working a typical 9 to 5 just to try to make that dream and keep it alive. While Sam Hunt Racing is no JGR or JRM, guys like Chandler Smith and John Hunter Nemechek have gotten top 10s out of these cars. 2023 is his big opportunity to tell owners with big pockets and big ties in this series, hey, I don't have the funding, I can't put this car on the racetrack financially, but with my capabilities behind the wheel, taking that financial risk is well worth it. Jordan Anderson Racing expands their operation to include low-energy Jeb, at least that's what KAULIG and our Motorsports think of him. They say racing takes a bit of luck, and Jeb Burton has certainly gotten the short end of the stick. He really needs that team, that organization to stick behind him, and that is what he is hoping Jordan Anderson provides that Matt Kaulig and Chris Auer did not. In the number 31 is Parker Retzlaff, and do not let his age trap you into thinking that he's unworthy in his craft. In just his second start in Xfinity at Richmond last year, in a Ryan Sieg car, he finished 10th. This youngster has proven he can take a 25th place car and he can finish in the top 20. In year 3, Jordan Anderson Racing has not just one but 2 drivers that can really get the maximum amount of performance out of their Chevrolet Camaros, and that is going to be critical for this team. Ryan Sieg Racing is the big-hearted, small family business of the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Kyle Sieg, Ryan Sieg's little brother, will run his first full-time season in the 28 entry after making 17 starts last year. He made a solid first impression, and he will look to have more races like his top 10 run at Daytona last year. Joe Graff Jr., the guy NASCAR Twitter knows and loves to death, leaves SS Greenlight Racing to run a majority of his races in the 38 with Steve Addington. And that is an interesting hire for SS Greenlight Racing, and I honestly wonder if he was able to give Graff the phone numbers necessary to get in touch with Joe Gibbs Racing to get his deal done with that organization. Either way, Joe Graff Jr. is going to be in this series full-time, and most importantly, gluing the organization together as the driver-owner is again Ryan Sieg. 2023 is perhaps the most interesting year we're going to see out of Ryan Sieg because, if you guys don't know, Cowboy Kevin Starlin crew chiefed his last rodeo for this 39 last year, meaning that Ryan Scarce now takes over. The question is going to be, is the depth at RSS Racing strong? Or is the Cowboy so strong that it will be a challenge to herd this 39 into the right direction, the direction that gets them back to the postseason? It's fitting that Alpha Prime Racing, the only team that has officially blocked me on Twitter, not necessarily the biggest alpha move, signs a driver that is great at blocking on super speedways. And the thing about Jeffrey Earnhardt is that he easily could have pulled a Cody Ware and fell back on driving for Junior Motorsports because of his name. Instead, he's doing the admirable thing by trying to earn his name, and hopefully it works out for him because he seems like he's a good driver. He just really needs to get that good opportunity, that good core of guys to really break out. Continuing off the theme of breaking out, how about Big Machine Racing? This is an organization that wants to be more than the little engine that could, hence the name Big Machine Racing. Parker Klingerman takes the wheel of the number 48, which is just the perfect combination because Klingerman, he has been under the radar. I think his performance in trucks, specifically at Mid-Ohio, speaks for itself. Parker Klingerman is a driver that has been overlooked by many big teams. Now, those big teams are going to be kicking themselves over passing up on one of the most undervalued drivers in all of NASCAR. Jeremy Clements is a fighter with a proven record, mainly last year when he overturned his penalty to make his Daytona upset count in the wins column and to get him into the postseason for yet another season in a row. His competition he'll have to go up against in 2023, it is a bit tougher, but Jeremy Clements and this 51, they will definitely fight to the end, maybe even defy our expectations considering this is a well-rounded core. They have an objective, they've battled through adversity in the past, maybe they do it again. Josh Williams returns to DGM Racing for the full-time campaign. BJ McLeod Motorsports wasn't necessarily his fit, but in the 92, he had some really good runs, including 15th at the season finale in Phoenix. Those are the results Josh Williams should strive for, obviously, but can he get there? I think that is largely dependent on what resources DGM brings to the track and if Josh Williams can avoid mistakes and move up a few positions on the scoring pylon, especially in races where there's a lot of chaos. Riley Herbst's Xfinity Series career has been, well, terrible, much like the company, his family's company, funding his racing dream. 3 playoff appearances is a distant second to running over 100 races in championship winning equipment and not winning a race. The expectation for Riley Herbst, it is simple: win. He, Richard Boswell, and the 98 have no changes, no communication to sort out. And plus this season, now he has a teammate in Cole Custer that is going to light the world on fire. There are no more excuses for Riley Herbst. The resources are in place. It is mandatory for Riley Herbst in this season to not only win a race, but also to make a fairly deep playoff run be more than just a round of 12 exit. Anthony Alfredo was cooking last year with the Our Motorsports team, especially on the super speedways where he got 2 top 10s. That's impressive, yeah, but not something that a top-tier Cup or Xfinity owner is going to recognize without instantly thinking of his woeful 2021 Cup rookie season. So for now, he will get to race the 78 for BJ McLeod Motorsports. Garrett Smithley goes from 0 to 99 in the team's second car, considering his last full-time opportunity in Xfinity was in the Johnny Davis number 0. The BJ McLeod Motorsports organization hasn't gotten much results outside of the SHR collaboration with Ryan Preece. That got the team 2 top 10s. Alfredo and Smithley, though, they are skilled and experienced drivers, so they will definitely be an asset as long as they bring the money necessary that allows them to race competitively. 2023's Xfinity Tour sees some notable tweaks. One of them, shamefully, isn't the return of the 5-hour Energy 250, whatever it would be called nowadays, at Gateway. Xfinity, though, they will make a new stop in the Midwest, anchoring the Cup Series race on the streets of Chicago. Unfortunately, I'm running out of boomer humor, so I'm just going to go with this. Bringing them old tractor trailer, it's a necessity for them Chicago race. I mean, wouldn't want to have another extreme racing scenario with all them carjackings in Chicago. As for the Xfinity Series predictions, I'm not going to sugarcoat who is going to dominate this series. Cole Custer wins the most races and the regular season championship. Josh Berry is also going to have a breakout season. Meanwhile, Sheldon Creed, John Hunter Nemechek, and Justin Allgaier will all win multiple races. Sam Mayer becomes the second first-time winner in Xfinity this year with a super speedway win. And Parker Klingerman stuns the playoff grid with a win at the Sonoma Xfinity race. Brandon Jones, Sammy Smith, Riley Herbst, and Chandler Smith will point their way in. KAULIG Racing is going to have a fairly disappointing year outside of their All-Star number 10 car. And as for full tank predictions, I really only have one, and that's at season's end. There will be 2 graduates of the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Austin Hill, who will drive a Richard Childress Racing entry after NASCAR awards RCR a 3rd charter, and Josh Berry, who will make the leap to the NASCAR Cup Series. And no guys, this will not be for either Junior Motorsports or Chevrolet. So what team even is it? Be sure to stay tuned to NRF Productions to find out just where I have him landing in 2024. So I hope you guys enjoyed the Xfinity Spotters guides. Be sure to check out the Cup and Truck Series editions, as I like to prove a point that human attention spans aren't completely going down the drain, so you'll want to watch those installments in full before Daytona. Other than that, this is Nathan for NRF Productions. Life's a beach, and then you drive.